Now, we're still on weathering. Alright, welcome back. We are still looking at soil formation. We tackled physical soil weathering in the previous video. Now we look at chemical weathering. Now, chemical weathering deals with three processes. Again, we have carbonation, hydrolysis, and oxidation. Now, carbonation deals with carbon dioxide reacting with rainwater to produce carbonic acid, which is a weak acid which will weaken the rock structure when it seeps into the rock. And that's explained by the blue. I tried to be creative there, and then it breaks up the rock eventually. Because what happens is, with carbonation, we have carbon dioxide in the air, right? Because we humans, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. That's a biology fact. Good. And so carbon dioxide will react with rainwater because we have carbon dioxide in the air, and if it rains, the water in the air, the water vapor, will mix and form carbonic acid. Now, this is a weak acid which will, of course, weaken any rock structure, which will, of course, cause the rock structure to break apart, and then we have the fragments which will form soil eventually. Then we look at hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is basically the breakdown of rock material using water seeping into the rock. So let's say the water seeps into the rock through these cracks, the cracks deepen, and eventually the rock breaks apart. Okay, so let's say the more and more water is just absorbed into that rock and the rock breaks apart. Think of it like, let's say you blow in too much air into a balloon. The more air you blow into a balloon, the balloon will burst, right? So the more air you blow into a balloon, the bigger the balloon becomes, and then the balloon bursts. So the more water was flowing into this rock, the rock wasn't expanding, really, but the cracks were expanding, or let's say they were getting wider and deeper, and eventually the rocks broke apart. And we have the fragments there. Good. Then finally we look at oxidation. Oxidation, here we have oxygen in the air, which reacts with a metal. Now, what is formed is rust, and that red. Usually we know this with iron, alright? So iron, there's always a reddish hue on that metal when it rusts or when it is oxidized. What does that mean? If it's oxidized, it means that oxygen reacted with the metal. That's what oxidized means. That's where we get oxidation from. It's really oxygen which is mixed or reacts with the metal. And then we have the rust. Now this rust has weakened the metal. That's why we see that red there, sort of like eating into the green, the structure of the metal, and then we have those peeling off, sort of, so pieces of the metal just peeling off from the metal. So that's oxidation. Good. Then we look at biological weathering. So here we are exploring plant roots, the effect of plant roots, of animals, and human beings and their implements, sort of. Now, if a tree is growing, the roots grow deeper, and over time they break apart the rocks underfoot, under the tree. Okay, that's very really common sense, really not really something to struggle much about, because of course for roots to grow they must go deeper into the soil, and therefore it will break apart some of the rocks to get down deeper, because roots have to grow deeper down in order to find water for the plant. You understand? Yeah. Moving on to animals. Animals with massive weight, like an elephant or a lion, once they trap rocks as they run, or as they walk, or trot. Honestly, I don't know what those animals do. Well, they have four legs. I have two. uh, they 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 crush the rocks underfoot, and so that's the fragment that's being explained there in the diagram. Then people, well, we know this. We always crush stones every time we walk. We break apart rocks. We also contribute to the weathering process that results in soil formation. Good. Then the last but not least, we have the decomposition of dead matter. So here we have a plant. The plant dies in the red. So of course in green it was healthy, red it's dead. Then we have these black little guys over here that decomposes. And decomposes, what they do is they feed off the dead material. And as they feed off that material, they release certain acids or chemicals that weaken the rock where the plant grew from, and the rock breaks apart eventually over time, of course. So that is my chemical weathering, biological weathering, and uh, decomposition of dead matter, which results in my soil formation.